Hi everybody, it's Christina Mascari from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to Jolie Homes YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be using Jolie Paint and tongue and groove boards to give my fireplace a shiplap look. So if you want to see how I got this fresh farmhouse look for my fireplace, just keep watching. I love my fireplace. It's one of my favorite things in my home. My last home did not have a fireplace, so I'm super happy to have one in this home. But as I decorate it for the season or just try to hang stuff on the wall, I've just never been able to fill up the space, and I just feel like it's been missing something. So I wanted to add a little character and a little oomph to it, but I didn't really know where to start. So what I did is I went to Jolie's website because they have this great tool called their style quiz. So in the style quiz, they're gonna walk you through a series of pictures and questions, and you just select the ones that most apply to you or the ones that you like the most. I was not shocked to find that my main style is farmhouse, so I thought, why not try to create a shiplap look over this fireplace? So for this project, I did recruit my husband to help me again. I know you've seen him on other videos, and this time I did get him to slow down and actually let me film all the building. So I have instructions for you on how to install the shiplap, and then we're gonna paint it with Jolie Paint. So let me zoom you in and we will get started. The first thing we did was measure the space. I decided I wanted our feature to be flush with the mantle versus going all the way to the wall. And then we also measured it vertically just to see how many boards we were going to need once we knew the width of them. And while he was measuring, my husband also grabbed the stud finder so he could measure and mark off where all the studs are, so we knew where we were going to secure the boards to the wall. Okay, so right now he is cutting the borders to go on the side so we don't have the jagged look of the shiplap on each side. For our trim, we're just using 1x3 common board. You can use whatever size you want, but this is the one that we picked out. To attach these to the wall, he's using a level just to make sure they're straight up and down. And then we have a compressor nail gun. If you don't have something like this to attach it to the wall, you could always use liquid nails, which is just like an adhesive that you put on the back and you would stick it to the wall. Or you can rent tools like this from Home Depot or other tool rental places around you. Once we got these borders up and secured to the wall, we were able to measure in between to get the perfect measurements for our tongue and groove boards. If you do not have a miter saw like us, you can always just do all your measurements and take those up to Home Depot and get them cut for you. Or you can borrow someone's miter saw, maybe in your neighborhood or that you know, or you could rent one. Okay, right now he is doing a guide rail, and what this is going to do is help him just measure off what each board should be, so he doesn't have to get the tape measure out every time. He'll just mark it once on here and then be able to cut it. So this is what the guide rail looks like. It's just a piece put in place to the exact measurement that he needs. He butts his board up against that guide and then makes his cut. This was easier too, just to cut all the boards at once, make a pile, and then bring them in together before we applied them to the wall. To get these up on the wall, he's using a level just to make sure everything is straight again, and then using that nail gun and securing them to the wall in the spots that we marked where the studs are. Using these tongue and groove boards is a really easy way to get a shiplap look. You don't have to worry about spacing the boards because they fit together like a puzzle, and none of the wall is going to poke through, so you don't have to prime or paint that to match your wood. I was surprised how easy this was to get up. When you are putting this up, you do want to make sure that you have an even amount of boards. So if there is one board that you have to cut, you want to split that difference between your top board and your bottom board. Ours almost fit perfectly, except when we went to put this last board in, we had to trim just a smidge off the bottom. And you do need to trim just a little bit more than actually fits in that space, because then you can push it in there flush. There will be a little gap between your last board and the mantle, but don't worry about that because you're going to use caulk to fill that up and make it seamless later. All right, this is the part where I tap out my crew/husband and I take over with the painting. So the first thing that I need to do is fill up all the nail holes that we created. I'm using this DAP plastic wood filler today. I really like using these tubes because I just find it's less messy. You can just squeeze the little amount you need right over the little holes, and then you go back with your putty knife and smooth that over. Just check the label of your wood filler or whatever you're using to fill these holes to see how long it needs to dry. Mine was 2 to 6 hours, so I waited 6 hours, and then I went back in with a medium grit sandpaper. I'm using 150, and I'm just going to wrap that around a sanding block and sand everything down by hand, just making it smooth and making sure that nothing is sticking up. I really want to make sure that that blends in with the wood. I always sand with the grain, which means I'm following those lines you can see running horizontally on my planks. And when I sand, I always use eye protection as well as my respirator to keep my lungs clean. Once I'm done sanding, I take a tack cloth and wipe everything down. And I also took a vacuum and just cleaned up the mantle. And now I am taping everything off to get ready to paint. I'm using frog tape on the sides here because I just got it at a conference and wanted to try it out. And then for the mantle, I'm using my 3M painter's tape and drop cloth in one. I know you guys have seen me use this on other projects and I just really love it. Okay, yay, I'm finally ready to paint. So I, again, am painting with Jolie Paint and I selected Palace White for this. This color was actually specifically designed by the founder of Jolie Paint, Lisa Rickard, and she created this for all the cabinetry in her own home. So this is one of the lightest whites that they have. They have one that's just a step lighter called Pure White, but the Palace White has just a touch of warmth to it. So to prepare for painting, I shook up my can and stirred it up as well to get all that pigment distributed, and I put it in a separate container, and I'm going to be painting with my Jolie Signature brush today. This is the small one. You can use the big one if you want to. I really love their brushes because they're very comfortable to hold the way they're designed. I like to squirt about 5 squirts of water in my paint just to thin it out just a little bit before I start painting. I always do that. So I'm just going to stir that up in my little handy cup that I'm using today that I also got at the Haven conference. And I'm going to be doing the basic finish today. So I'm just getting a good amount of paint on my paintbrush. And I'm just going to start going in every direction. Not making like really crazy brush strokes, but not worrying about making a smooth finish. This is the same type of finish that I did on my headboard. And I really love the way that it turned out. And I think it's really going to match the characteristic of the shiplap. And I'm going for like a more rustic farmhouse look. So I really like having these brush strokes in there. You can achieve a lot of different finishes with this paint, and Jolie actually makes it really easy for you to learn all the different techniques that you can get with this paint in their everyday guide. It's available in PDF on their website, and I will link it below so you can check it out. It just talks about all the different finishes you can get and how you get them. I think painting in the basic finish is a lot of fun just because you get to be really expressive with your strokes. And it is going to create that hand painted, just very light textured look that's going to look different from trim and a mantle, which are very smooth. And I also wanted that wood grain and those knots to come through for that rustic farmhouse look. If you don't want to see those as much, I do recommend priming this entire thing before you paint it and priming it with a shellac-based primer that is going to help hide those knots and seal those knots. But since I'm going for a more rustic look, I am just going straight on with my paint. This paint dries very quickly in about 20 minutes, so you'll be able to do your second coat then. You just want to make sure that it's dry to the touch, and it will have like a chalky matte finish when it's dry, so just check. But after about 20 minutes, it should be dry. And then to paint my trim pieces on the side, I just grabbed this sash brush so I could get in the corners really well I know I have my painter's tape up here, but I try not to just slap the paint on. And this just helps me get in those corners a little better. And before I paint my second coat, I'm actually going to put some caulk on the sides in between the trim and the shiplap. And I got this cool little dap cap tool that I'm going to show you. It actually helps smooth out the caulk, and then you can put it on the cap of the caulk. So here I am just putting that in a gun and then going down and making a little strip in between where my trim and my shiplap meet. And then I'm going to go back in with that tool and just push it in there so that fills in like those gaps that I had. You don't have to use this little tool. You can just go in with a wet rag and smooth it out. I just saw this next to the caulk in the aisle, and you know, I'm a sucker for little things like this. But the really cool thing about it is that when you're done with this, because I am going to have to use this again once I'm all finished with painting, you can put this on as a cap, and it keeps the caulk from drying out so that I can use it again at the end of the project. So this caulk is ready to paint after 30 minutes. So I'm just applying my second coat of paint onto my boards, and this is just going to be painted on the exact same way I painted on the first coat. I'm just doing strokes in every direction. Again, not being too crazy or too thick with the paint, but just subtle little brush strokes in every direction. Something I did do differently on this second coat is I took that sash brush again, and in between my boards, I would grab that one and I would really push that paint into the seams where the tongue and groove connect, just to make sure that that paint is all the way back in those holes so I wasn't seeing any of those gaps. And then I did decide to do a third coat. This is completely up to you, the amount of coverage that you want. And again, I do still see some of that wood grain coming through and those knots coming through at the end of my third coat, but that's what I wanted. That's the look I was going for. Again, if you want it to be more smooth and not see that stuff, use a shellac based primer. So once I am done with that third coat, I'm going to go ahead and remove my protective painter's tape that I have on and my drop cloth and everything as I prepare to do the rest of the caulking. So like I showed you in the beginning, that board is not flush up against the mantle, but this is what our friend molding caulk can hide. So I am just going to get my cap back off, and this is not dried out at all because I was able to keep that on there. Please don't judge me for my caulking skills. I've done this quite a lot, so I think I'm okay at it, but I'm sure there's other videos that can teach you how to do this better. But you're basically just going to fill any gaps that you see just to make it look like one seamless piece. So I'm just going to fill along the mantle here and then smooth that out with a wet rag. And then I'm also going to do that between the trim and the wall. And that is actually my last step because I am not going to seal this. You could seal this with wax if you wanted to, but I like the chalky matte finish that this paint gives, and I'm not going to be setting stuff on top of it, so it really doesn't need that protective coat on top of there. So just to remind you what I started off with, here is my fireplace before, and here it is now with shiplap and Jolie Paint. You guys, I really love this. I am so glad that we did this project. It really wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, and I think anybody can do this. This has really just pull the fireplace together and make it fit better with my decorating style. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope you have fun trying this project out. Send me your pictures. You can also leave me any questions you have down in the comment box below. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again to Jolie Paint for partnering with me on this video, and I will see you guys next time.